these have been some dark times. And of course, I'm talking about the political violence that has been going on. It is out of control. Things have gotten crazy bad. Like if you look back last year, we had the assassination attempts on Donald Trump, who was running for president. And there was a lot of talk about lowering the temperature, about politicians turning down the rhetoric. Because the rhetoric that's used by politicians and people on the news and people on social media, it's very toxic. And this can lead to people that have certain mental issues, people that are on the edge, people that are maybe at the bottom, who are feeling that they are trapped and they have no other way to deal with life. It encourages them to go out there and commit these horrible acts of violence. And this hasn't gotten better. As I said, there was a lot of talk of lowering the temperature and bringing down tensions, and it look at us now. Charlie Kirk got assassinated a couple weeks ago. Just a couple days ago, there was the attack on an ICE facility in the United States, where ICE is they're the ones who handle immigration. There has obviously been an increase in deportations and immigration law enforcement, right? And some people are not okay with that. And well, apparently one of them wanted to go over to an ICE facility and shoot shit up. There was one person that was killed. There were two that were injured. This person started shooting indiscriminately. And some people will bring up and they'll say, well, it's the guns. Well, it's not the guns. I mean, the guns do make violence accessible. That's true, But the problem is that this isn't just happening in the United States. This is happening in places where there are no guns. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in places where there are severe restrictions on weaponry, like the UK. You have knife crime that's going up in the UK, and this is racially based crime. This is ideology driven crime, where you have people that have different views, different political views, that are getting into these situations and they're getting violent. You have people that have maybe are critical of the migrant situation in the UK. You have migrants that are also critical of people that have, more conservative views in the UK, and it's letting people to clash and get into these situations. And they don't need guns. They will go out there. They go out there. They use knives. They use kitchen utensils. They use cars. You see this in places like Germany as well. Trucks to kill other people that have different views, or that are of different races, or that are of different religions, and so on and so forth. And it's insane. So it's not just guns. It's not just the United States. This is happening all over the West. And so I wanted to talk about why is that happening. And there's two big pillars that I would place blame on. First is an old one, a classical one, if you will, and that is the media, the news media. The news media, they fan the flames. They increase the temperature. They trigger negative emotions in people. And the reason why they do this is because over time, the news media isn't new. We had, print media, we had the radio, we had the television, and now we have, the internet. And over time, like any industry, there has been a lot of companies, a lot of businesses that have competed in those realms, right? And there has been a lot of natural selection, if you will. And what companies have noticed is that there is a method to delivering the news that keeps people engaged. And the reason you want to keep people engaged is because these companies, they rely on advertising as their form of income. And every public company out there, they have one job, and that is to make more money, to make the number go up. You want more profit because they want to give a return on the investors that are funding the company, right? And so how do you get people to watch more ads? How do you get ad companies to buy more ad space and give you more money? Well, you got to get more eyeballs, and you got to get those eyeballs to watch for longer. And what these companies have learned over hundreds of years is that the types of stories, the types of news coverage that gets people to tune in the most and the longest is when the world is ending. Is events where big events are happening, bad things are happening, and things are they are crazy out there. Those are the big stories. And these are stories that trigger negative emotions like anger, sadness, anxiety, fear. These emotions are very, they allow us, they make us really pay attention to what's going on. And the reason why that is because we are animals, right? We are mammals. And if you look back, the vast majority of our evolution, the vast majority of the engineering of our bodies, the way that our bodies were put together and the way that they evolved to become what they are today, all of that happened. 99.9999999% happened while we were living in tribal societies out in the wild before, print media, before the radio, before all of this stuff. And if you're out in the wild, you're living with your tribe, you have the kids running around, you're like, I don't know, you're making pottery, right? You're making pots of pottery. Everything is fine. What are the types of things that are going to get you to immediately stop what you're doing and immediately pay attention? Well, it's things that trigger these kinds of emotions. Things that are very important, right? Things that require your attention immediately. So I'll give you an example. What's a good one, right? Again, you're sitting there, you're making pottery, kids are running around, everything's fine in the tribe, you're in your little village, it's all good. Well, a bear shows up, and the bear roars, and the kids scream, right? They're all scared. The bear is making his way towards, I don't know, you or the children or whatever. Everybody immediately stops. And they feel, what do they feel? Anxiety and fear. It is emotions like anger, anxiety, and sadness. These negative emotions that make us pay attention, because it is these negative emotions that are critical to our survival. If something funny happens and it makes you laugh, yeah, that's funny and this and that, but it's not something that like you can continue making your pottery, you can continue doing your work. But if a bear shows up, all of a sudden you're in fear for your survival and the survival of your people, right? Anything that triggers these negative emotions that are very important towards survival, that get us to get up and do something about whatever it is that's threatening us, whatever it is that's getting in our way, whatever it is that's causing us to be stressed, is gonna get our attention. If you're enjoying this video and you'd like to see bigger and better content, the only thing you need to do is hit subscribe and like, and I'll take care of the rest. And what these companies have realized over hundreds of years of refining their process and seeing what kind of stories people buy the newspaper for back in the day, or people, tune in to the news channel or whatever, is that the stories that trigger these negative emotions are the ones that get people to tune in. A big example for me personally was when I was a kid was 9/11. When 9/11 happened, oh my God, it was a horrible time. I think the vast majority of Americans hated the fact that 9/11 happened. It was a terrible time. A lot of people died. It was brutal. But you know who liked 9/11? The media. Because when 9/11 happened, they all of a sudden had an endless barrage of news and updates of what was happening for what felt like the next, 4 to 6 months. It was all about 9/11 and everybody was glued to the TV. Like, I remember there was this one story, and this is going to sound very silly. There was this one story at the time where um, obviously there was a lot of recordings of the smoke, and there was pictures that were taken of the smoke that was coming out of the towers after the planes crashed, right? Um, and there was this one particular picture where it looked like the smoke was kind of shaped, I believe it was shaped like a demon or the devil. And this was all over the news because all of a sudden this was triggering people's fears. It was obviously, the United States is a very Christian country, right? In terms of like the leading religion here. And so this was just preying on people's fear and making people think, oh my God, what if the devil was behind this? What if, Satan was somehow, directing the people that came over here to like kill all these people and whatever else, crash into these towers. And you know what it turned out to be? Much later, it comes out that it was somebody had used Photoshop to change the way that the smoke looked so that it would look like the devil. It was the stupidest fucking story. And yet it got everybody to tune in. It got everybody talking, and it made a lot of people afraid for what was coming next. There was all these news stories about how, 9/11 was just the beginning. And they were going to, next they were going to come for Disney World. And they were going to come for the schools, for the schools of American children, and so on and so forth. It was an absolute feasting moment for the media. And it is stuff like that gets people to tune in and watch a lot of ads, and gets these news companies to make a lot of money from advertising. But the problem is that all this does is that it gets people to feel negative emotions, to feel angry about what happened, angry about these news, to feel bad about them, to feel depressed, to feel hopeless, to feel anxious and afraid. And what happens when you get a large number of people to feel hopeless, afraid, and angry? Well, you get stuff like what's going on now. Now, some people will probably think to themselves, well, we've had the media forever. We've had the media in the 60s and the 70s, and all of that. TVs have been around for a long time. But now things are even worse than they've ever been. At least that's what it feels like, right? Well, it's not just the news media. The news media is one pillar. The second pillar is much worse. And that is social media. Social media is a relatively new phenomenon. I remember when I was a kid, I was using early media sites like MySpace. It was stuff like GeoCities. There was different ways to engage. I know at one point there was that Gaia Online. There was MMOs that are not exactly social media sites, but they're ways to socialize in the internet, and all of that. And later came on in 2007, came Facebook, Twitter, and the rest is history. Well, back in the day, the internet has been around. We had the internet for many years. Since like the 80s. 80s is when we started getting people started getting like home internet and stuff like that. And before that, it was like in universities and labs and all that. But it wasn't until the smartphone era where everybody started getting phones, and everybody started getting access to technologies like 3G, 4G, and everybody started getting access to the internet and social media. And it was around this time where everything started, all the tensions started going up. And you can see that there are studies about this. When it comes to race relations, this is a big one, is that it looked like race relations in the United States since the civil rights era in the 60s kept getting better and better and better. And everybody felt better about race until social media came in. Around the early 2010s, when a lot of people were finally ingesting social media, all of a sudden race relations started getting worse and worse. And all of this culminated with the Floyd, 2020s protest that, I think a lot of people these days have mixed feelings about. But what I'm saying is that the media, the social media, is worse than the traditional media. And the reason for this, and I think that that social media is the biggest reason why all of this is happening, why tensions are so high. And the reason for this is because social media is a better, more tailored content delivery method. And what that means is that social media is just more intelligent thanks to the advent of algorithms. So if you go back to the 60s, you turn on the TV, right? Maybe you have, I don't know, let's say that, let's go to the 80s, right? You have cable TV. You turn on the TV. There's, you have like 70 channels or something like that you can browse. So you have a lot of options, right? Let's just say that. You can flip through channels. Sure. You can find channels that you like, but you don't have the degree of control that you do now. You have to watch, if you go to like a news site, a news channel, it's going to air whatever it's airing in the moment, like kind of like what you're seeing right now in the background here. It's going to air that. And you cannot choose what else to really watch. You could use, back in the day, I used to do this, you could have a VHS player. A VHS player is basically like an old school DVD player. And an old school DVD player is basically like an old school version of Netflix. Where you had to use discs. Like you would buy a disc of something like a movie like The Lord of the Rings. And then you would put the disc in the DVD player, and the DVD player would play Lord of the Rings on your TV. Right now, all you do is go to Netflix or whatever and watch Lord of the Rings there. But a VHS player did that same thing, but with much lower quality and with tapes. And you could plug it in, and you could to your TV, and you could record what was going on in the TV right now, and then you could watch it later. But it was nowhere near as intuitive. You couldn't just like fast forward as easily. The quality wasn't as good. The tapes could only record so many hours, like a small amount of hours. And you just didn't have that degree of control, especially like somebody like let's say that channel, like let's say like Fox News. I don't know if Fox News was around in the 80s, but whatever that was, they didn't have that degree of control to show you and keep you engaged in a way that social media does now. And why is that? It's because of algorithms. So algorithms, they're basically essentially really smart, really good tree of if or options, right? And so it goes, does this person like, I don't know, comedy? If so, then you're going to show them this. If not, then you're going to show them this instead, right? And it just keeps going down the tree, basically intelligently deciding what kind of viewer you are, what kind of content consumer you are. And it shows you, it finds the stuff that you're going to be most interested in, because it realizes when it shows you something and it's not something that you're really engaged in, you're going to leave and you're going to stop watching. And then when you find a video that you like, all of a sudden it goes, oh, this person likes this kind of video. And then it starts recommending you videos like that. The problem is that because videos that keep people engaged oftentimes have a negative slant to them and trigger these negative emotions, you get people in these sort of cycle of watching negative media and feeling negative about life, feeling negative about the world and their country, feeling bad about the state of things, feeling like this is the worst time to be alive. I can't tell you how many times I've gone outside and heard somebody say, oh my God, like it feels like the world is ending. These are the worst times. And it's like, how could these be the worst times, dude? You remember the Black Plague? I mean, I know that you weren't alive for the Black Plague, but my God, those were scary times. Like so many different times through history have been absolutely horrible, absolutely brutal times to be alive in. And you're complaining about 2025? When we have life as easy as it is, especially in countries like the United States, Canada, Australia, in Europe, and so on. So the media, the social media algorithms, essentially radicalize people and make them lead them down these rabbit holes where they seek more and more negative content that keeps them more and more engaged, keeps them more angry, more anxious, more hopeless, you know, and more fearful of the future. And it's not that everybody's going to turn into a political assassin. It's that the people that are at risk, the 0.01% of people who have mental health issues and are not getting the treatment that they should, who are going through a bad time in life, a bad time, like just they've lost a lot, they've lost everything. Who knows? These people at risk for taking action and trying to solve the problem. If the problem is conservatives, like Trump, then you're gonna have kids like that dude who shot Trump last year. They're gonna go ahead and take matters into their own hands, and they're gonna go ahead and try to shoot the bad guy because they think that Trump is Hitler. They think that he's a fascist. They think that he's a Nazi. All of these negative terms that honestly don't deserve to be used. Like calling conservatives Nazis is just it's a dishonor. Like it's like Nazis were horrible compared to conservatives, right? Or liberals. Like I remember people used to call feminists feminazis. It's like, come on, dude. Like, yeah, I mean, sometimes they're, like they want to control and maybe limit the things that people can do, but Nazi is such a strong word. It just invalidates it. It makes the word meaningless. And so the two biggest problems are the media, the traditional media, and social media, because they both feed ideas into people. They both radicalize people and make them feel that the world is terrible, because that's what gets people to tune in. That's what gets people to pay attention. So how do we stop it? Well, I can think of simple solutions. I mean, you could ban social media. In some places, social media is banned. Social media is banned for children in some states in the United States. I believe the EU and the UK are trying to place limits on social media, whether it's good or not, and so you can stop the effect that social media has on people by banning social media. The problem with that is that you're not going to ban social media. It's certainly not in the United States. It's just not going to happen. People are not going to be okay with it. I think the average person, you ask the average person if they should ban social media, and they'll be like, what? No, you shouldn't ban it. The other aspect is the news, right? It's the same thing with the news. Should they ban the news? Should they? That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen in the United States. Okay, so you can't ban it. All right, well, what if we restrict speech? What if we limit the kinds of words, the kinds of incendiary rhetoric that the news and that you see in social media? And again, that's not going to happen. It would work, but at what cost? Over here in the United States, we have the First Amendment. And the First Amendment grants freedom of the press. It grants freedom of speech, freedom of religion, so on and so forth. And it is the First Amendment. It is number one because it is so critical and so important. Our Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. It's the right to be able to have, weapons. To protect yourself, protect your family, and protect yourself against the government should a tyrannical government rise, right? That's the idea. And anything about the Second Amendment, for a long time, there have been, school shootings, mass murders, and things like that. And never, out of all the people, who are all over the place, and all the representatives in government, and just the way that people feel in general, nobody has ever thought to themselves, with any serious support, let's repeal the Second Amendment. Let's get rid of the Second Amendment. It's never that. It's always these sort of band-aid solutions like, oh, we're going to ban automatic rifles. Oh, we're going to, have these checks for like people that are getting, trying to buy a gun, and so on and so forth. And what has happened? What is the result of that? Well, you still have mass shootings, and you still have school shooters. So there's this sense, and a lot of people, especially you see people that are on the left in the United States, Democrats, liberals, and progressives, who are just like, especially the progressives, who are just like, okay, another school shooting. Oh, another day where we're going to do nothing about it. Because nobody's going to challenge the Second Amendment because nobody wants to take away people's freedoms. And the reason for that, if you're European and you don't understand, is because the United States, the American people have a very libertarian, and I mean libertarian in the sense of American, because my understanding is that in Europe, libertarian means something else. Apparently, libertarian is more left over there, something like that. Over here, it's more right or whatever. But libertarian in the sense that it's freedom. People should have the freedom to do what they want to do. Leave them alone. It's just you should do your own thing. And because of that, the American people are not going to support getting rid of the Second Amendment. And it is American culture. It is in our DNA. The Second Amendment, the First Amendment are one of the most American things. Right? And I don't think Americans are they're just very, like getting rid of what makes us, some of the stuff that is core to being an American. It just kind of feels wrong. And so nothing gets done. And so more school shootings happen and more mass shootings. And that's what I think is going to happen with you could say the rising of the tensions and the political violence being on the rise. It's not going to get resolved because I don't think the American people, forget the representatives, forget the senators, the House of Representatives, forget the courts, forget the president, the actual people themselves. I think if you go around and ask people, should we ban social media? Should we ban the news? Should we ban the speech, the freedom of speech that the news has or that people have on social media? We already saw some of that stuff, by the way, the freedom of speech that people had in social media. We saw that stuff during COVID, where the Biden administration was trying to censor the way that people could express themselves on places like Twitter. And that's looked back as a very bad thing. And then there's the stuff here with Trump where the FCC chairman said some things about ABC and Jimmy Kimmel. And then that led to Jimmy Kimmel being fired. And now he's been brought back, and it's brought up the whole free speech thing again. And it's not that the FCC banned Jimmy Kimmel or anything. It's just that they were kind of like, I don't know about this. I don't know that we like this. And that's all it took for ABC to go, yeah, we better nip this in the bud. And personally, I am a free speech advocate. I am a free speech person. I am not a free speech absolutist because I don't think you can have a working government with absolute free speech. And by that I mean obvious stuff, like the stuff that's not protected under free speech in the United States. Like, for example, if you're brought into court and you are testifying under oath, that you're saying nothing but the truth. You can't just say, "Oh, I lied," but it's okay because of the First Amendment. I'm protected. I don't have to ever say the truth. We couldn't have a working law system like that because everybody would just go, "Oh, First Amendment. That means I can lie." Did you murder this person? No, First Amendment. And so that's not something that's legal in the United States. You can't just lie to the government under oath like that. But pretty much everything else is legal. You can misgender people. You can say whatever, like you can say whatever words you want, words that are slurs, or racial slurs. You can say whatever you want basically. And it's fine. And I am totally okay with that. I love freedom. And I think freedom is great. And that's fine. But if you believe that freedom is great, how are you going to then go in and censor the news and censor, social media? People aren't going to do it. The American people aren't going to be okay with that. I don't think that if you grab a consensus of people, you just walk up to them and say, like, should they censor what the news can say? How Mr. Hannity here the words that he can use, how he can talk about, certain people and whatever else, talk about the government and whatever else. I don't think people are going to be happy with that. They're going to be all like, oh, this is like censorship. This is like, isn't this like anti the First Amendment? And so the sad thing is what is the cost of freedom? The cost of freedom here right now is that these companies can thrive off of triggering people, making people angry, making people hysterical, making people anxious and fearful for their life and their lives and their country. And they do this for a profit. And they're going to continue doing this, and they're not going to stop. When you go to Instagram, when you go to X, Twitter, when you go to Facebook or whatever, you are going to see content that is going to rile you up, that is going to make you upset, whether it is Trump bad content or, Biden bad, Kamala bad, Gavin Newsom bad, whatever it is, content. And it's going to get you to tune in because it works. That is the cost of freedom. And I'm not saying, I think people should think for themselves on what should be done about this. But I'm just thinking pragmatically here. I don't think anything's going to get done. Just like the Second Amendment, they're not going to ban guns. And just like that, they're not going to ban free speech. So it's not going to get resolved. And then the last aspect, which is toning down of the rhetoric. Like when the Trump assassination happened, it was like, oh, we need to turn down the rhetoric. We need to stop, using these words and all of that. And that lasted for like fucking 7 days before they were back at it, calling, politicians were back at it, calling each other Nazis and commies and, whatever else. It's just not that your politicians are not going to turn down the rhetoric. Not all of them are going to shut up and just, talk to people like people. They're not going to do that. Why are they not going to do that? Because using this strong rhetoric, calling Trump a Nazi, that works in some ways. That in some ways can help win elections. And Trump doing the same thing for the Democrats and for the media and whatever else helps them win elections. It makes people feel like things are at stake and like really it's like this fight of good versus evil. And the Democrats are the bad ones and the Republicans are the good guys. So you got to vote for Trump in 2024, or the Republicans are bad and the Democrats are good. So you got to vote for Kamala Harris in 2024, It works. And that's why politicians are not going to do it. They're not going to self-censor. They're going to keep doing the bullshit that they do, saying the shit that they do and demonizing each other like they always do. So that's not going to stop either. And even if it did, it wouldn't be enough. Not without doing something about social media and news media. That brings me to security at what cost? We could resolve this if we ban the news, if we ban media, if we banned, like, I don't know, like they do in like fucking the Middle East or something. If we banned social media, and if we, really did, let's say that we banned free speech and make it so that, politicians can't call each other Nazis and shit and the devil and whatever, it would have a great effect. And I think we would massively reduce the amount of political violence, the amount of assassinations and mass shootings and school shootings and whatever else. It would be security. But at what cost? So let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think is the actual solution that will solve this? And how can it be solved without losing our freedom to express ourselves, our freedom to be who we want to be? Thank you for watching. And I just want to say, if you watched through this whole video, do yourself a favor and don't fall for social media's trap. Don't fall for the algorithm. Don't fall for the news media and the us versus them mentality. At the end of the day, we are all human. We are all people. And yeah, we have different views and different opinions and whatever else. But that doesn't mean that we should be murdering ourselves over it. It's not a happy path. It's not a good path. It's just going to end with a lot of bloodshed and people dying on both sides. And it would just make things worse.
Subscribe and like.